This is the Reading Instruction Show. I am your host, as always, Dr. Andy Johnson. Topic of today's show is called Dys-piano-la. Let me explain. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Little Pat. Little Pat was taking piano lessons, and Little Pat struggled mightily. He couldn't learn. After 2 years of piano lessons, he had made almost no progress. Compared to other students taking piano who are of the same age, he was at the bottom of 3% as measured by piano standardized tests. Now, his parents tried piano interventions, consisting of more drill and practice of sight reading skills and scales, but Pat hated it, and it didn't work. So they gave him more of what didn't work, more drill and practice of piano sight reading skills and scales, and it didn't work to an even greater degree. And Pat hated it. Pat felt ashamed. So piano specialists were called in, and they determined that Pat had trouble learning to play the piano. Imagine that. Who would have thought? His parents took Pat to a medical doctor who gave all sorts of tests, and it was determined that Pat couldn't play the piano. Imagine that. And they gave it a special name. They called it Dys-piano-la. Pat had Dys-piano-la. Now he had a label. He is dyspianolexic or dyspianolic. The doctors gave him a brain scan. They found that little Pat's brain did not light up like the brain of an expert piano player. They declared him to have a brain disorder. And they found that they needed to find some sort of treatment to cure this disorder. He was out of order. So back at piano school, they did the same things, only much harder drills. They did harder and much more sight reading skills and scales, harder. And his parents sent him to an expensive after-school program called Orton Pianoham. Nobody thought to try something different, of course, such as the Suzuki method or something else. They just kept trying the same things. The results were that little Pat, who once loved to listen to music, learned to hate music. And over time, Pat learned some, but he never did develop his full piano playing potential. And Pat grew up to become a killer clown. Would you say that Pat had a brain disorder? Would you say that Pat has a piano playing disorder? What type of screening would you use to identify piano playing disorders? Would you compare his brain to piano players? What type of piano playing intervention would you use? It seems silly, doesn't it? But that's what we do with reading. It's exactly what we do. Here are some common terms: dyslexia, yes, but the same name: profound reading disability, severe reading difficulty, reading impairment. I prefer reading difficulty and severe reading difficulty. Definition: dyslexia, an inability to learn to read that is of unknown origin. That is the best definition that I have found. People's brains are different. That's why we learn things. Some people learn things that others can't do. We learn different things at different rates, and we can't learn things, and we can. It's not a big deal. Some people struggle to learn to read, not a big deal. Or to play the piano, not a big deal. Or to tap dance, not a big deal. We're all good at some things and not good at other things. It's how our brain is made. That does not mean we have a disorder or a disability or a brain malfunction. People learn different things differently. Now think back in the 1700s. What people had to learn was much different. They had to learn farming and horse riding and whatever else they had to learn. But they didn't read the amount or to the degree that we did today. Not as many people learned to read. Many just learned their letters, learned their letters and read at a very functional level. Now, dyslexia does exist. Severe reading difficulties does exist. It is a mathematical thing. If we have a bell-shaped curve, of course, half the people are going to be below average, and we are going to have a lower 1 to 5%. That is normal in a normal population. That's the term we use for severe reading disability or difficulty or dyslexia. That is the term, 3 to 5%. Now, 10 to 20 to 30 or 40, depends on the study, have some form of mild to moderate reading difficulty. The International Dyslexia Association would say all these people have some form of dyslexia. No, they're simply at the bottom 30th or 40th or 20th percentile, whatever you choose to use, however you attribute it. But we're always going to have some that have difficulties. Now, everybody agrees that finding students who struggle or have the potential to struggle, that an early intervention is essential. Yes, everybody agrees with that. But that doesn't mean one focusing on phonics is the best type of intervention. There are a variety of interventions. Just because you don't agree with Orton Gillingham, just because you know that it has no research basis, does not mean that you do not think that some form of early intervention is necessary. And everybody agrees that some form of phonics instruction is needed for struggling readers. It's not the what, it's the how and the how much. And even with struggling readers, there are differences. And we're going to look at the 3 deficit areas. But what does the National Reading Panel say about phonics instruction with struggling readers? Phonics instruction contributed weekly, if at all. Not weekly as in every week, but weekly as in not much. Helping poor readers apply these skills to read actual text. Statistically significant, fails to exert an impact on poor readers in grades 2 to 6. Imagine that. Now, as I mentioned, all struggling readers are not the same. There are 3 deficit areas: fluency, comprehension, and word recognition. Struggling readers could struggle in 1, 2, or all 3 of these. And here's the thing, each is assessed differently and each is addressed differently. How you address fluency is different than how you address word recognition and how you address comprehension. So this idea that a one-size-fits-all approach fits everyone, it fits very few people. If you struggle with fluency, focusing on word recognition would not be very efficient or effective, would it? Likewise, if you focused on word recognition, fluency and comprehension wouldn't be necessary. So it's important to know the deficit area. So, bit of research. This is an important study by Rosalie Finks. Now, here's the thing about research. Research helps us understand. Research contributes to a theory. Theories are built up of many research studies like dot-to-dot pictures. A single research doesn't prove anything. It doesn't debunk anything. It offers a little bit more understanding, and it can support things. Now, in this research conducted in 1998, it's a classic. She examined highly successful men and women with dyslexia. Of these highly successful adults, they all had extreme deficits in their decoding abilities. All were identified as having, quote, dyslexia, unquote, growing up. 6 people with MDs, 17 PhDs, 9 with master's levels, etc. These were prominent people who had been extremely successful in their fields. The common link was that all became avid readers as children. All were able to find their passion and read. All were able to read highly complex material in their area of passion, and all were able to make significant achievements within their field. As children, they were allowed to find their area of interest, their passion, and they were able to read and discover in their passion area. This allowed them to develop background knowledge and familiarity with the text in their area, and that was more important than letter clues in reading accuracy and reading comprehension. The implication is that teachers need to help all students discover their area or areas of interest, their passion. They need to allow all students to be able to select and read books and other materials that are of interest to them every single day. And we need to have reading instruction and interventions that develop all three cueing systems. Now, this is an interesting study. Now, sadly, this helps us understand. And one of the sad things about the Education Science Reform Act of 2002 is it would exclude this type of research. Yet this type of research is essential. You got to get behind the numbers to help you understand. This has been the Reading Instruction Show. We've been talking about dyslexia or Dys-piano-la.